21st century religion is a schism away from religion. Now, down through history, you're going to look at your history again. Everything has been an example of that in religion. Hinduism, ancient religion, the schism away from it is Buddhism. Judaism, the schism away from it was Christianity. And in a similar fashion, also Islam. Then Christianity, through Catholic structure, had another schism with Martin Luther to be Protestant or Protestants or whatever they call it. Schism again. But now that we get here to the 21st century, what we need is a schism away from all of those religions. All of them. Because all of them are Dark Age. All of them rely upon myth, intentional ignorance. Myths of all types that justify repression of women, repression of homosexuals, repression of people who aren't part of that little religion, right? Everything they have based upon and structured their continued, ongoing dogma of religion is from myth, ignorance. People 2,000 years ago who didn't know anything. And so they made things up. They covered the most common thing across the globe was religion was developed in the face of the certainty of death. So to give comfort, to give an excuse, to give some sort of just dream of, well, what's it all about? What's it all about, Alfie? Well, they made it up. And of course, since they had no idea, they made up fantastic things. They made up big phantasms. And they could use the certainty of death in the religious structure to force control of the community, of the whole religious community. And say that you gotta do what we say, because if you don't, oh boy, when you die, oh boy, when you die, and you're gonna die. Some point, you're gonna die. You're gonna suffer. Oh, geez, you're gonna suffer. So you better do what we say. That was the most basic structure of all this foolishness of Dark Age religion. And throw in creation myth. They didn't know anything. So they just said, well, there was this time when everything was great. Oh boy, was it good. There was this guy, and he just big. I mean, really big. And he just dreamed all of this into existence. And that's what we are. We're just this dream. And it's a he because men are dominant in the society, and that's how we're going to do it. So men being dominant, God, of course, is male as dominant, and that puts women in their place as secondary status, and on and on it went. All of it. Dark Age religious stuff. Well, here in the 21st century, you have evolved away from all that stuff. You have no affinity for, belief in. You understand the great fraud, you could say, that all that Dark Age religious stuff is. And you see, it's being the ridiculous side of it is also that these myths, these fabrications, are being used to justify repression. What do they justify the repression of homosexuals on? What do they justify the repression of women on? Well, it's in our book. Oh, and it's holy. Oh boy, it's holy. It's the direct word from, it's the real, oh gosh. Made up. Even the stories are just lunatic stuff that makes you wonder, now wait a minute, there's all sorts of rational holes that are going on here that don't make sense, and they're trying to make us believe that that's somehow valid, right? One is that example is that all communities, human community, right, around the globe, you have to live together. So you have to have, some sort of safety and kind of ability to live together in a format that's, kind of safe for each other. So, of course, as a community, you can't go around allowing people to murder each other, steal from each other, beat on each other, or, assault each other, rape each other, or something like that. You can't have that and have a community live together. It'd be just, this intense chaos. And yet there's the story. There was the one, it's out of that old, what's that book there on the gun? The Dark Age, the Bible one. It's somewhere in that book. Well, they made up this thing, right? There they are, and this guy goes up in this chaos, evidently, of this community, right? They don't got any rules or anything and all this crap. And he goes up and he comes back with these evidence. The story comes back with these tablets with the 10 Commandments. And of course, because it's the era of where ignorance and, well over 90% of the whole population is illiterate, everything has to be justified by saying, well, it came from God. That's why you have to follow it. It came from the gods themselves. It's the gods. It doesn't matter if there's 500 gods or if there's one. It's all made up. So it came from the gods. And so if you don't follow it, the gods are after you. See? So he comes down with these 10 Commandments, and he has to say, well, hey, guy, where'd you get these from? He said, well, I got them straight from God. Oh, yeah, man. I got them right up there. I was in communication with them. Which, of course, is lunatic stuff. Of course not. It's intuition. You're talking to yourself. You never are talking with God. There is no other. You are always here within you, and that's as far as it goes. And that's what we know in the 21st century. That's reality. But here back then, they had to say, oh boy, it's a big one. Which leaves you to say, he had to go up and come down with the 10 Commandments kind of thing, like it's some big deal. And it had to come from the God to justify it. So it makes you wonder, who were these people before the common sense of the 10 Commandments? Were they out there just killing each other? Evidently. Were they out raping each other? Evidently. Brutalizing, stealing from each other? Were they a bunch then of just like savages? Must have been. Because, see, folks, as you know, in 21st century reality, there's nothing religious about the organizing principle of community, human community. To live together, you have to have a structure of rules that give some safety, some protection, some freedoms to the members of the community so they can live together safely. You don't need religion for any of that. It's just a fact. And so what you're still doing is trying to limp along, pulling these things along to say it's the, and this is the Ten Commandment thing is from the Christians, by the way. And they're trying to say, oh, you got to put this 10 Commandments here and see. But along with that comes all the myths, all the justifications, all the other crap. And then it's used overall to justify repression, segregation, denial of equal rights. And you're trying to live in the 21st century. Not the 8th, or maybe the 10th at best, right? You're in the 21st century. You have evolved away from all that crap. You intelligently understand and get it. That all that old religious crap has got to go. All those myths. There are no creation myths. They're myth. They're made up. They're fantasies. As is all the stuff of God itself. That's just made up. There is no God. There never was God. That's the fact. That's the reality. It's just made up by ignorant people. They didn't know what a flood was. They didn't know what an earthquake was and all that other stuff. They just had to come up with something. So here as you sit out in nature, for example, you can hear the birds in the background and whatnot. You're around reality. You're around reality. And reality, folks, as scientific research has investigated and analyzed and studied and restudied and done, reality is pretty amazing. Reality is amazing. You don't need myth. Fantasy stories. You got some amazing facts that come with the territory of being alive. Reality. 21st century people get it. It's about reality. You're born here, you live for some duration, you die here. Guaranteed. So, everybody through history has given these fantasy stories and made up stuff and fabulous things to try and come up with. What do you do while you're... What is it then? What's the purpose? And if you look at reality, if you look at what we've investigated and found through scientific research, analyzed, studied again, got consensus, yes, that happened. And then you say, well, wait a minute, this whole thing's been, of Earth, has been going on for billions of years. There have been huge epochs of time. Millions and millions of years. Millions of years, folks, where humans were not around as we are today. Not here. Well, pulls the rug out from all that myth, all that fantasy world of all that Dark Age stuff. And you come in and you say, all right. Then in the big view of things, there is no purpose. You're just species. Species making available and use of what is here on this planet that keeps the species alive and able to reproduce and keep going. And See? Darwin's thing. It's still basically the fact. Your species, like anybody else, through the long history, millions and millions into billions of years. So the religious gang says, "Oh, you can't move away, take away the religious view, the fabricated religious thing of heavens and hells and gods and everything, because people will just, they'll just cry, they'll just fall apart. They'll just have nothing to believe in." Now, the key word, believe in. And belief is based on not knowing. Belief is just believe it, not know it. Believe it. Have faith in it. Well, that creates a momentum. That has a, you hold on to something, a fantasy. Well, okay. Like somehow you still believe there's a Santa Claus or something. Like it's kind of foolish the older you get. Well, there's nothing wrong with pulling the rug out from all that fantasy crap and looking at reality and saying, well, really, you're born here, you live for some duration, you die here. That's the fact. There is no inherent purpose. We are species. The species do this to survive, as species have through millennia, millions of years. And then if you look at it that way, of course you get, well, wait a minute then, we got the air, the water, the food, all of it on this planet keeps us going and our kids going. So we better take care of that planet to keep all of us going. 21st century basic intelligence, So anybody who pollutes your water, pollutes your air, leaves pesticides on your food, that's criminality. Massive criminality. They're hurting all of us. Okay. There you go. There's a basic thing about, all right, what we're going to do. But what's the purpose? What's the purpose? Is there a purpose? For God's sake, get to the key. Well, like we said, really, in the big view, there isn't. What you do during your life, and what you have to do, is community. Like all we've done throughout millennia anyway. But this time you do it in 21st century intelligence, and that entails equal rights. First thing, equal rights. It's about you first. Not business, not corporations, not religion. No, it's about you first. And that's the focus and the direction of your whole life, and then your kids' life, and then your community's life. And, well, wait a minute. Then you're taking care of the water, the air, the food supply, because it's about you. It's your air, it's your water, it's your food, it's your health care. You're first. As you always have been, actually, throughout history. And this is the time you do it, while you're alive. That's your purpose. Be a benefit to others. Your first motivation for all things throughout your life. Be a benefit to others. Because you've seen the other one. Profit, money, make the money, get the profit, make it rich, get out there. Well, you see, reap what you sow. You see what happened. When profit was the measure of success, which it was, then there's no ethics. There are no justice. There is no justice. There is no ethics. There is no rights, human rights. It's only profit first, profit. You know, like Republicans. In America, it's like Republican Party. They're all just criminals like that. Like Trump, you know. They're all Trump. And Pence. They're all these just residue of Christian wacko and corporate criminals of poison and pollution to justify everything. And on top of it, stir up the violence and aggression and ignorance of religious wackos, like the Christian nuts, and the racists, like the Ku Klux Klan and all these white supremacist nuts. And they're all in the Republican Party. Well, you see the end zone of all that stuff, of that activity. Needless war, suffering, starvation, denial of your equal rights, lack of access to health care, basic amenities. That's the old way, Dark Age way. And here in the 21st century, this is what you're clearly seeing. It isn't just religion. It's the whole spectrum, religion, economics, together. That you are finally seeing clearly in a 21st century intelligent way. And you see, this all got to change. You can't keep doing that crap anymore, where you're much smarter than that. You don't believe any of that stupidity, the myth. Fraud. You're not wandering around in the dark, banging into things and making up stories about what you bumped into. You're in the light. You see clearly. You made a schism. It's time for a schism. This time away from all of those old Dark Age toga and sandals religions, so that you can stand in the light of your evolved intelligent wisdom.